She walked into the grand ballroom, confident yet humble, unaware that her very presence would ignite whispers and laughter. To them, she wasn't the daughter of a powerful CEO. She was just someone who didn't belong in their world of glass towers and billions. But what started as cruel laughter soon spiraled into a moment that would shake their empire. By the end of that night, their smug arrogance wouldn't just cost them their pride. It would cost them billions. How did a single act of mockery unravel everything they had built? Ariana Cole had grown up in boardrooms instead of playgrounds. Her father, one of the most respected black CEOs in the country, had built his empire from the ground up. Proof that brilliance and resilience could carve a place even in spaces that weren't built to welcome him. For Ariana, that legacy came with weight. She wasn't just another young woman. She was the symbol of everything her family had fought for. On the night of the gala, she stepped into the glittering ballroom with quiet grace. Crystal chandeliers glistened overhead, and conversations flowed like champagne. To many in the room, she was known only by her last name, Cole, a name tied to innovation, leadership, and power. But to others, she was simply an easy target. They didn't see her years of education, her discipline, or the countless hours she had spent preparing to take her own place in the world of business. They saw only what they wanted to see, the daughter of a black man who had risen too high in their world. At first, Ariana moved unnoticed, greeting familiar faces and staying near her father. But whispers began to stir. A small group of billionaire heirs, cocky, privileged, and untouchable in their own minds, watched her with smirks. To them, she wasn't a peer, she was entertainment. One laugh sparked another, until the mockery became a spectacle, subtle enough to hide behind glasses of wine but sharp enough for Ariana to feel every jab. What Ariana didn't realize in that moment was that their cruelty would not only expose their prejudice, but also set off a chain of events that would cost their family more than they could ever imagine. The laughter didn't stop. It grew bolder, carried on waves of privilege that filled the ballroom. Ariana tried to ignore it at first. After all, she'd been raised to stand taller than whispers. But the pointed stares and poorly veiled chuckles pierced her composure. They weren't mocking her dress or her presence. It was her identity. The cruel amusement came from the fact that she didn't look like someone who belonged in a billion-dollar negotiation. One of the heirs, flushed from too much champagne, leaned into his circle of friends. With a smirk, he whispered loud enough for Ariana to hear. "Imagine if she ever sat at the table. Our fathers would lose everything." The others erupted with quiet laughter. It was a joke to them, but a dagger to her dignity. Ariana's father, deep in conversation across the room, hadn't noticed. Alone in that moment, she felt the sting of being reduced to a punchline. Years of education at Ivy League schools, internships under global leaders, countless hours of proving her worth, it was all invisible to them. They didn't see her. They saw a stereotype and nothing more. As the evening unfolded, the whispers became careless. Words like quota, charity, and token slipped from their lips as though she wasn't standing just steps away. Each remark pulled Ariana deeper into a storm of anger and humiliation. Yet she stayed composed because she knew something they didn't. This gala wasn't just a party. It was the prelude to one of the largest deals of the year. A $7.5 billion partnership between her father's corporation and the very family that now mocked her. The contract, still unsigned, sat in the balance of trust, respect, and reputation. And while Ariana wasn't the one signing the papers, she was about to become the deciding factor in whether the deal lived or died. When the mocking reached its cruelest peak, Ariana excused herself. She wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing her broken. But instead of retreating, she made her way toward the group of investors her father had been speaking with. If these heirs wanted to laugh, they were about to learn what it meant to underestimate not only her but the legacy she carried. The room didn't know it yet, but every smirk, every whisper, and every insult was building toward a reckoning that would shake the marble floor beneath their feet. The same laughter that filled the air would soon echo back as the sound of their empire crumbling. The signing ceremony was scheduled for the very next morning. The billionaire family's patriarch arrived confident, shaking hands as though the outcome was already written. To him, Ariana was an afterthought, a shadow in the corner of a deal too big to fail. But what he didn't realize was that the whispers and laughter from the night before had already reached the ears of the one man whose respect mattered most, Ariana's father. When he walked into the boardroom, the atmosphere shifted. Silence replaced the idle chatter, tension rippling across the polished table. The contracts lay stacked neatly, pens waiting. But Ariana's father didn't sit. Instead, he placed his hand on the papers and looked around the room with a calm that carried more weight than anger ever could. "I built my empire on trust," he said evenly. "On respect. Without that, no deal is worth signing." He glanced toward Ariana, whose steady gaze held both strength and quiet vindication. Then he turned back to the family across the table. "Last night, your heirs showed me exactly how much you value either." Confusion flickered into panic. The family's patriarch tried to recover, fumbling through excuses. Just young people joking harmless fun. But the words fell flat against the sharp memory of their cruelty. Investors present exchanged uneasy looks. Cameras recorded every strained expression. In that moment, the facade of untouchable power began to crack. With deliberate calm, Ariana's father pushed the contract aside. "Respect is not negotiable," he said. Then, with a single motion, he stood and walked away from $7.5 billion on the table. Ariana followed, her steps as steady as her heartbeat. The news spread faster than wildfire. By the afternoon, headlines blared across every financial outlet. Billion-dollar deal collapses amid accusations of racism. Stocks for the billionaire family's company plummeted. Partners distanced themselves. The empire that had laughed so freely only hours before was now scrambling to survive the fallout. And at the center of it all was the daughter they had mocked, no longer invisible, but a force that had turned their arrogance into ashes. The fallout was immediate. News of the collapsed $7.5 billion deal spread across headlines, shaking boardrooms around the world. What had started as laughter at a gala ended as a financial disaster no one saw coming. The billionaire family, once untouchable, watched their empire crumble under the weight of arrogance and prejudice. For Ariana and her father, the message was clear. No fortune is worth more than respect. Their refusal to stay silent turned humiliation into a moment of power, showing that dignity can outweigh billions. Ariana, once mocked as an outsider, became a symbol of strength, her story inspiring countless others who knew the pain of being underestimated. And so, one question remains. How many more empires will have to fall before respect becomes the rule, not the exception?